We've now got 13 chords, including the sus chords. We've got 5 strums and 6 different finger picking patterns, and like I've said before, a number of pieces to play and practice. It's time that we started putting all this music into what we call a little bit of theory. Now with the theory, the first part is going to be learning to read music. Now the purpose of this course in modern guitar doesn't necessarily mean that we have to learn the reading of music right through, inside out and backwards. What we do have to do, however, is know enough to understand music, so that when somebody puts a sheet of music in front of you and says, hey, can you play this? You don't go, no, I can't. You have a look at it and then you can just see, you can understand different parts of it and know what it's about. So, first thing we'll learn about is the main part of music, which is the part that confuses everybody. Music is like a language, it's an international language, and as such it's a bit like learning a new language for people that haven't done it before. But however, it's not very hard, and again, as guitarists, we're only going to take what we need, so most of it we can actually discard. Now, first off, you can see you've got the stave on the screen. It's made up of various different parts. You can see you've got a top part and a bottom part, of which the bottom part is called the bass stave. That's what the bass guitarist in a band would play, or if you're playing piano, it's what the left hand does. We're going to ignore the bass stave altogether because it's got absolutely nothing to do with us. So the treble stave, which is the other part, is the top line, is what we're interested in. Now, at the very left-hand side of it, you can see there's 2 different types of clefs there. One's called the bass clef and one's called the treble clef. The bass clef is the one that just goes like this, and the treble clef is the big, long, squiggly one like that. It's a lot nicer, the treble clef, and that's the one that we're interested in. If you see any music and it has a bass clef and a treble clef, ignore the bass clef and only look at the treble clef. Now, just to the right of that, you can see there's 2 numbers, one on top of the other. That's the time signature. The top number is the only number that we're interested in. It tells us how many beats per bar there are. Sometimes it's a 2, sometimes it's a 4, sometimes it's a 3, it even goes up to 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, whatever. But most of the time it's 4. Now 4 is what we've been playing with, all 4 beats to the bar. If it was a 3, then it would be 3 beats to the bar. But like I say, it's always been 4 for us, so we'll carry on with 4. The bottom number you can just ignore for the time being, but the top number. So far with our piece of music, we can see that it's got 4 beats to the bar. We're ignoring the bass stave, we're only looking at the treble stave with the treble clef, and moving along from there, you can then see that you've got the lines going vertical down. They're called the bar lines, much the same as when we play our music, we divide it into bars, that's a bar line. So the piece of music we're looking at actually has 3 bars. Now you can also see the notes on there. The notes go up and down and across the page. We're not interested in what they are up and down, but we are interested in where they are going along the page. And we'll be coming to that in a little while about where it is and what we want to know about it. But just so you know the different parts, you've got the time signature, of which we ignore the bottom number. You've got the 2 different staves, the bass stave and the treble stave, of which we ignore the bass stave, and the 2 different clefs, which is indicated by which stave it is. The 5 lines, of course, are the music and the stave itself, and that's the entire stave there. That's how to read music. Let's look at another stave now. This is the one that's relevant to us as guitarists. It's the treble stave with the treble clef. It's got the time signature there, which is 4/4, and it tells us 4 beats to the bar, again looking only at the top number. And it's also got the bar lines there, so we can see it's 3 bars in length. Now we'll put the notes on it. And as you can see, you've now got the notes going up and down there. Now, this is the confusing part about music, is all the different notes there. This is the part that gets people all worried about it. But don't worry about the notes. Just ignore them. We're going to dismiss them out of hand because we don't actually need to know what they are. So we'll take them back off. What we do need to know, however, is a little bit about the notes and what they're worth in terms of values. The first note we're going to learn is called a whole note. It's a round head of the note like normal, except it's hollow. It has no stem on it. It's worth 4 beats in length. So if we were to play one whole note, what we would do is just pluck a note or a chord. We'll pluck just a 6-string note for the moment, and we're going to hold it for 4 beats. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, allowing that note to ring. So if we were to count in 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, that's a whole note. The next note is a half note. It's very similar in that it's still a round hollow head, but it has a stem on it now. This note is worth 2 beats, so this one would go 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's only worth 2 beats, so in 1 bar you could get 2 of those notes in. 1, 2, 3, 4. See how I plucked it twice? The next note we have to learn is similar to the half note, except that the head has now been filled in. This one's called a quarter note, quarter being 1/4 of a bar of 4/4, but still it's only worth 1 beat. This is the one we've been using for our strum number 1, the basic strum, where we've been going 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's a quarter note. So if we were to play one bar of quarter notes, we would go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one bar of quarter notes. The next note along is an eighth note. As you can see, it's similar to a quarter note, except it's got a little tail on it, which is like a little frilly bit on the end. That's worth 1/8 of a bar, as in half of a quarter note. So there's 8 of them in a bar. So that goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and see, each one is worth half a beat. So that's similar to the strum number 2, what we just did. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and so with what we know so far, we could probably say that the basic strum is made up of quarter notes and the standard strum is made up of eighth notes. So we're now assigning the notes back to our strums and we're starting to learn to read music. So you should be able to recognize all those notes. The last note that we know is called a 16th note, where there's 4 of those notes to one beat. We won't be using them, but it's good to know what they are anyway, because they're quite quick. It's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, and 4, 2, 3, 4. So you can see it's 4 to each one. So there's no strums we'll be using at this level which need to use them, but it's nice to know what they are. So that's the 4 basic notes. The whole note, which is worth 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. The half note, which is worth 2 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. The quarter note, which is worth 1 beat, 1, 2, 3, 4. The eighth note, which is worth half a beat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and the 16th note, which is worth 4 to 1 beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Quite fast there. So make sure you can read and recognize those notes on a page of music. So what does all this theory mean to us? It means now that when we look at a line of music, we can have a little bit of an understanding of what we're doing. Again, while we don't really want to know all the dynamics and everything about it, we want to know the basics. So let's have a look at a piece of music now on the screen. Now if we look, it's all very confusing, but if we just look a bit deeper at what we need, we see it's not so bad after all. What you've got there is a vocal line, a treble line, and then also a bass line. Again, we don't worry about the vocal line because of course that's what the vocalist is doing. We don't worry about the bass line because that's what the bass guitarist is doing, so we only look at the treble line. So we can see it's 6/8, so it means it's 6 beats per bar, which we won't be playing and we won't be using, but however, just so if you were to play it, you could see it's 6 beats per bar, which is unusual timing. Then you can see above the whole thing up the top there, it's got a chord. It's got a chord of G minor. Now we don't know a G minor chord at the moment either, but we will certainly be learning it. But in the meantime, you could say as a guitarist that, right, we have a G minor chord, 6 beats to the bar, and off we go. We can see that the bar is made up of eighth notes, so it goes 1 and 2 and 3 and there's our 6 beats, and that's it. That's all we need to know. We can see it's made up of eighth notes, it's a G minor chord, and 6 beats to the bar. So it's not so confusing anymore. We don't need to know what the notes are doing, and we don't really need to know all the different little bits and pieces around there. G minor chord, 6 beats, and eighth notes in the bar there. Now, if you look on further now, you'll see that there's a couple of chords there which I've actually written out as music, and with all the notes there. We've got the G chord and also the C chord. Now, as music, they are very confusing to read, and very few guitarists can actually sight read them. You'd be very surprised at how few people, especially guitarists, can actually read music, because we don't need to. What we do need to know, though, is a little bit of an understanding. Now, if you were to see that C chord as it's written in the music format on a page, you wouldn't be able to read it. Most likely, nor would I, very quickly. But however, above it, like where the G minor chord is, there would be a C chord there, and it would say C. So that's what we will play as guitarists. We look at the timing, the bars, and the chords up the top now as well. Instead of reading what the notes are, we look at the chords. However, from the music and the notes, we do take the timing. Like as we can see, the 2 chords on the page are now made up of quarter notes. So we know each of those chords is worth 1 beat. So now we're actually going to use what we've learnt so far. We're going to play one line of music. It's on the screen and in your book now. It's very confusing, isn't it? You can see that lots and lots of notes all over the place, but let's just take a step back and take what we need to know. We can see it's the treble clef, so it's what we're going to play. Have a look at the timing, it's 4/4, and the note up the top, of course, is the 4, so we know it's 4 beats to the bar. And then if we look above it, we can see it's got the chord there. Now the first chord is the G chord, so we can quite easily play that. Let's put our fingers into the G chord. Then we'll have a look at the notes. While ignoring all the notes on top of each other, because that's the chord that we know is very confusing to read, we can see that it is made up of quarter notes, and there's 4 of them. Now, underneath it, there is one further symbol you'll have to learn. You can see the little symbol like this. It's like a little box there without the line down the bottom. That means to do a downstroke. So if we were to grab our pick, and from there we can then play that now. So it's quarter notes, so it's one beat on each note. It says to use a downstroke, and it also says to use a G chord. So let's play the first bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's have a look at the next bar now. It says to go to a C chord. So we'll move our fingers into a C chord. We can see it's still using quarter notes there, so it means one strum or one down strum on each bar, one beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's have a look at the third bar. It's an A minor chord, so we'll put our fingers into A minor chord. We can see it's still using quarter notes, so it's one beat on each, and it's using down strums again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the fourth bar is exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we can now play that line of music. I'll play it for you, and you can probably play along. We'll count in, and then we'll go. Look at the treble stave, the timing, the chord up the top, and then the further symbol that tells us to use a downstroke. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure you understand the value of the notes there. These are quarter notes. Now that we can know and understand the basics of music, the different note values, the treble clef, the time signature and the chords up the top, then we can start to put our strums, which we've been playing, into music now, which is quite exciting for us. So let's have a look. First of all, we have the basic strum, and no longer do we have to have arrows and timing there, we just have the music now. As you can see, it's got 4 quarter notes, and each note has a little down strum symbol underneath it. So let's just play strum number 1, or the basic strum, using the music now. We'll do it on an E chord, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, nice and simple, and the music says to do down strums. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The next strum we'll do is the strum number 2, the standard strum. Again, we've got another new little symbol to learn, and that's just like a V, and that means to do an up strum. So we can see the timing is made up of eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Notice with the eighth notes that when you have more than one, they get joined by a little line across the top. That's just to make it tidier, otherwise the music would get very untidy. And if you wanted to see it written out like that, or write it out yourself, you would understand why. So when you get more than 1 or 2 eighth notes in a line, or next to each other, they get joined with a line above them. So, strum number 2, the standard strum, now written as music, has a down strum with our symbol and then an up strum. So let's play it. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's move on to strum number 3. We can see it's got a quarter note, then 2 eighth notes, then another quarter note and 2 eighth notes. 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. Same as we've been playing it. Following the strumming symbols underneath, we can see it goes 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. So these strums are exactly the same way we played them earlier and we learned them. They're just now written as music, which is much more professional and much more of an international language, like we'll be coming to in a minute. Let's have a look at the ballad strum. You can see the first note is a half note, so that's worth 2 beats. Then the second note is a quarter note, so that's worth 1 beat. And then we've got 2 eighth notes, which are worth half a beat each. Altogether, it adds up 2 plus 1 plus 2 halves is 4 beats. So the first one's worth 2 beats. 1, 2. The next note's worth 1 beat. 3, and then the 4 and 4 and. So let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4 and you just played the ballad strum there instead from the music. The last one is strum number 5, the build-up strum. As you can see, it's 8th notes again, just like strum number 2. However, it has the down strum symbol there, and it also has a little crescendo above it, which tells us everything we need to know. To use down strums, to use 8th note timing, and to put a bit of a volume increase in it. That's our strums now, written as music, much more professional. Now that we're reading music and we understand it, we understand the various things. Remember the treble clave or treble clef, the time signature, the chords up the top, and watch out for strumming below. Not all music has it, a lot of it leaves it up to your interpretation, but some does, however, just so you know what it is. Watch out for crescendos and watch out for accents. So we understand all these symbols now. We can now start writing out our songs as music. Now the first song is the same one by the Animals that we've been learning recently, the old 60s classic. It's now written out as music though. Let's go through it step by step. Let's look at the first bar. The first bar says to do an A minor chord, then it has a half note, so we do that for 2, 1, 2, then it has a quarter note, 3, and then 2 eighth notes, 4, and so let's do all that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and the next bar has a quarter note, then 2 eighth notes, then a quarter note, and then 2 eighth notes, so it's 1, 2, and 3, 4, and the next bar is D, and it has all eighth notes, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and it also says there to change to the D sus4 on the last beat. Whether you do that or not is up to you, but if you want to play it as per what the music says, then you would. And the last bar is an F chord, and it's also 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We're on to the next bar, which is the second line. It has an A minor again. It has a half note first, which is worth 2 beats. 1, 2, then a quarter note, 3, and then 2 eighth notes, 4 and. The next bar is a C chord, which has a quarter note, 2 eighth notes, a quarter note, and 2 eighth notes. 2 and 3, 4, and then the last bar, or the last 2 bars, 1 bar of E and 1 bar of E sus4. Now it also has the down strum symbol underneath it and the little etc. That means to use the down strum for the rest of the bar. As we can see, it's made up of eighth notes and down strums, so we can think that's the build-up strum. So let's go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2. And that's where you're now playing that song from music. So if you noticed, or if you didn't, then certainly go back and check now, but it's exactly the same as what we learnt a few lessons ago with this song, where we changed the strums on every bar. However, now instead of labelling each of the different strums with the different terms, we can now read it straight from the music, which is good, because music is an international language. So no matter where you are in the world, if somebody else can read music, then you can read it too. So you can play together, even though you can't speak together, perhaps, then you can certainly play together. So let's do that one more time from the music now. I'll play it all together without stopping, but you can see it's exactly the same as what we learned. However, now we're reading it from the music. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, If you can do that well from the music, then you're doing very, very well. It's a good skill to learn, and it takes a while to master. Now, to keep you practicing and keep you learning the music, I've provided one more song here. It's an old 60s song again by a great band called the Kinks. It doesn't have any of the strums that we use, because we're not going to talk about it in terms of strums. We're only going to talk about it in terms of music. It doesn't have any indication of downstrokes or upstrokes, so I'll leave that entirely up to you. However, usually with eighth notes, on the ands is where you would do the upstrokes there. Just like the strums we've learned, always on the and we're doing the upstrokes, and on the 1, 2, 3, 4s we're doing downstrokes. So let's have a look at it. The first bar is a bar of E, and it says 1, 2, 3, 4 using all quarter notes. So let's go 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our first bar. Let's have a look at the second bar now. It's got half a bar of A and half a bar of D. So the first 2 beats are using the A chord, and it's a 2 quarter note, so that's 1, 2. The second half of the bar is using the D chord, and it's got 4 eighth notes, so it's 3 and 4 and. So that whole bar, if we just work out the strumming for it, it's 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. Now that's not like any strum we've ever learned before. That's a completely new strum. But we're not going to add it to our strum repertoire and call it number 6 or anything like that. Because that's the idea of music, is that you can now strum something just from the music without having to know strum numbers or strum names or anything. Or else eventually when we were playing songs, we might have strum number 110 and strum number 210, which is getting ridiculous. So now we read it straight from the music and we don't need to know what strum to use. So the second bar is 2 quarter notes on the A, and then 4 eighth notes on the D, 3 and 4 and. Let's have a look at the third bar now. That's a bar of E, again, it's got 3 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, and then the last 2 eighth notes is 4 and. So let's play, and the last bar of course, or the last bar of the first line, is an A chord with 4 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try and play that first line of music now. E chord with 4 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, A chord, 1, 2, D chord, E chord, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So So we're playing something completely different now. Let's have a look at the second line. It's got an E chord for 4 quarter notes, so that's easy for us. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got an A chord with 2 quarter notes. And then 3 and 4 is D chord with 2 quarter notes. And then we've got a C chord, which has got 2 quarter notes. 1, 2, and then 3 and then a D chord, which takes the 4 in. So that's the 7th bar. It's quite a hard one. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then the last bar is E. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so let's play that again now. I'll play it through without stopping. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's reading music and reading songs from the music. It's a much better way, it's a much more efficient way to play songs. It's also a much tidier way, and it's also an international language. If you can read music from the songs, or read songs from the music, excuse me, then it's a far, far more professional way to play songs and play your guitar in general. So do take some time over this last lesson and do really, really learn to read the music well.